Welcome to Classic Movie Club. I'm your host, Chad Knurk, the digital editor of Film Review. We've been celebrating cinema here at Film Review since 1944, when our first annual book hit UK bookshelves, and we're going to be talking a lot about the history of British moviegoing today. In this episode, I'm speaking with Martin Humphries, director and co-founder of the Cinema Museum. Devoted to keeping the spirit of cinema alive, it's the only museum in London entirely dedicated to the experience of going to the cinema and tells the story behind the rich cultural heritage of moviegoing in the United Kingdom. Founded in 1984, the museum is the result of a lifelong fascination with cinema going by collectors Ronald Grant and Martin Humphries. On display in the Cinema Museum is a unique collection of artifacts, memorabilia, and equipment from decades of exhibition history. The museum's mission is to preserve the history and grandeur of the cinema from the 1890s all the way to the present day, with the collection highlighting that golden period of film going between the 1920s and the 1960s. Set in the historic surroundings of Kennington, the Cinema Museum is a veritable treasure trove of movie memorabilia. It's a glimpse of another time and an important period of movie-going history. Over the years, the museum has been host to countless screenings, book signings, and events, as well as conversations with such movie legends as Glenda Jackson, Claire Bloom, Gloria Stewart, and Sylvia Sims. Let's welcome Martin to discuss the origins of the museum and the building's special link to cinema history.
Hi, Chad.
Hi, Martin. Thank you so much for joining me. I would love to talk to you about how the Cinema Museum started. The collection began privately and then eventually became a museum.
Yes, that's correct. So what happened was that Ronald Grant, who's my partner, he worked in the cinema industry from the age of 15, training as a professional projectionist. So when I met him in 1979, he already had a very sizable collection of cinema memorabilia of all kinds, including projection equipment. This was at a time in Britain when cinema was in serious decline, with many high street cinemas being demolished. And we discovered if we offered the demolition men beer money, they would let us in and we could take anything we wanted. So over a 5-year period, we seriously rescued many, many, many items that are now currently on display in the museum. So the question became, what do we do with all this stuff that we have now amassed? So after having some discussions with friends and so on, we decided to create the museum. We became a not-for-profit in 1984, and then we became a charity in 1986. So we're a small independent museum with a board of trustees and very, very little public funding.
When did you open your doors?
1989. That we moved from Brixton because we were in a very unsuitable building to the old fire station in Renfrew Road, which is just 2 minutes from here. And that was much better. And we were able to do screenings, but we were also able to be open for guided tours as well. We moved into our current building in 1998. This is the administrative block of what originally was the Lambeth Workhouse, which you might understand more as a poorhouse, where poor people ended up. This was very Victorian. Anyway, it was an enormous workhouse. There were 1,400 people here. And the most famous was Charlie Chaplin. He came in here twice as a child. He was mostly brought up by his mother, Hannah, along with his half-brother, Sidney. Hannah fell into hard times and she had no choice but to come into the workhouse. So because of the Chaplin connection, we have quite a lot of Chaplin memorabilia on display in one section of the museum. And the Chaplin family have been very, very good to us over the years. So it's a very nice connection to have.
So much of what is in the museum would not exist. These were things that were going to be thrown away, basically.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, it's lots of Art Deco, lots of signage, portraits of film stars, stills from films, lobby cards, freestanding signage, cinema uniforms. It's just conjures up the experience of going to the cinema as it was.
Exactly. It's all about the movie-going experience kind of in the
Yeah.
golden age.
Plus, we have a big events program.
You do, what a very robust program. What is that
Yes.
like? And do you have partnerships for some of those screenings? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of them, like the Kennington Bioscope, that's a partnership. A bunch of silent musicians just wanted to be able to practice more.
Yeah.
Well, it's been going years now. So every 3 weeks, we show a silent film with live piano. And twice a year, we have Kennington Bioscope weekends, one of which is a comedy weekend and one of which is a more drama orientated weekend. But then we do a film noir season. We do a Women and Cocaine season, which is a Tallulah Bankhead quote. So it's pre-code films with strong female characters.
I love that.
Doing a road movie season. That's being put on by the Nickel Cinema. So that's another partnership. So yeah, we have lots of partnership events and so forth.
What were some of the unique aspects about movie going at this time in the UK?
Firstly, cinema was very popular. The initial cinemas, which were built from 1910, were relatively small, 200 or 300 seats. But then along comes Mr. Odeon, and I think it's 1933 the first Odeon was built, and that was a bit much bigger cinema, a kind of super cinema, a picture palace, really. And it was the picture palaces that people remember with great affection because they were huge, they were luxurious, and they were often full. Most cinemas operated a system known as continuous performance. So the program runs continuously from the time the cinema opens in the afternoon until it closes in the evening. Now, the starting times of the individual programs were advertised, but many people paid no attention to this. They just turned up when they were free, went in and bought a ticket and sat down. So it could be anywhere in the program. If you've missed the first 20 minutes of either of the feature films, that's a great chunk of plot explained. So you're sitting watching a film, not completely understanding what's going on or quite what the relationships are between the various characters. This didn't bother anybody. People sat until it came round to the bit where they came in, at which point most people stayed on to see the program through to the end because now you understood what you were looking at. Or if you weren't very interested, you just left. So it's a very different system from the one today. You only get one feature film today. In the old days, you got two. You got an A film and a B film. Plenty for your money.
The collection is really focused on exhibition. There's a lot of,
Yes.
like you mentioned, Art Deco decor,
Yeah.
technical
Yeah.
equipment, and then everything from the ushers' uniforms to their torches.
Yes.
In your view, what are among some of the more unique elements in the collection?
Well, we have an armband that would have been worn by staff during Saturday morning pictures, which were film clubs for children aged 5 to 15. We have a sound on disc on display, so
Mhm.
we can talk about the transition from silent to sound on a tour. I think many of the cinema uniforms are unique because each chain had a slightly different version of the uniforms of the time, and they are rather military in style. That seemed to be the favored design for cinema uniforms. We have some cinema seats, some cinema sofas. They're rather unusual today, I would say. It's very, very atmospheric, and people seem to fall in love relatively quickly with the museum. There are things we feel we can improve, and over time we will. Parts of the museum are rather too busy. There's kind of too many objects in the space. So the one advantage of that is that when people come back for a second time, they see things they missed the first
Mhm.
time round.
Mhm.
Uh, but in an ideal world,
And you have a hallway that has, like, the old category boards, and I'm
yes,
seeing that one of them has the old certificate H.
yes, it does. Yeah,
Um,
this came in with Dracula and Frankenstein in
uh,
1930 and lasted till 1953 when it was replaced by the X certificate and the age was increased from 16 to 18. And of
okay.
course, that's now the 18 certificate in Britain.
In addition to just the experience of going to the museum, you also offer a really rich research possibilities. If someone wanted to research a specific topic that sort of fell either within cinemas themselves during this period or something within those decades, what would that process be like?
They will just need to contact me by phone or by email, explaining what their area of research is. And if we can help, then we would arrange for them to come in. We do, of course, charge a fee for this, but we get all kinds of people coming to do research. Sometimes have had people from cinema companies wanting to research their own history because we probably have material they no longer have and things
Right.
like that. We get film historians coming, people who maybe are doing something about their local cinemas and want to try and find more information about them and so forth. And of course, people like coming to us because it's not microfiche, it's handling the actual materials.
Mm,
Uh, and that's always better for researchers because if they're going through, say, a trade magazine looking for specific information that they think is there, they may spot other things that are of interest to them or are of interest to other researchers who they know. So it's a much better way than looking at a microfiche.
tangible is always more
Yeah,
interesting.
it is.
You get more information from that, I think.
Yeah,
You also have a connection to film review because the 70th edition of Film Review had its launch at the Cinema Museum
it did.
back in 2015. What
Yeah.
was that evening like?
Oh, it was a very enjoyable. Lots of people, celebrating a great annual.
Why is legacy and the history of film going so vital to preserve, do you think?
Well, it's our past. You must preserve the past. I mean, it's social history, it's design history, it's architectural history, it's the history of cinema going, it's the history of film, traveling from the silent period through to the early sound, through to the 1950s spectacular, and the changes from black and white to color and technicolor, which I always think is fabulous.
Yes.
So, so it's got so many different aspects to it, really. People completely get it today. The importance of having saved and retained this material, the importance of history, and so forth. But I have to say, when we were digging around in cinemas that were being demolished, people thought we were completely out there, why are you collecting all this old stuff? Well,
Yeah.
there's been 180-degree turnaround. People completely understand the importance of celebrating the past and social history. It's so important, and it informs you now and tomorrow.
Mm, mhm. Yeah, and the further that we get away from that past too, it only becomes richer.
Yeah.
And we've seen that with film memorabilia too, in terms of that market
Oh,
and
good
how
goodness me.
yeah, it's
We would
now
not be able to put the museum together today.
mm,
It
mhm.
would be impossible because it would just be you'd have to be a multimillionaire, in terms of acquiring the material and so forth. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Well, and that's what makes it so special too, because to have amassed this large of a collection, it really, like you said, would be very difficult to get
Yeah,
all of that under one roof
yeah.
today. Martin, how can people visit you and the Cinema Museum?
So there's two ways. There's three ways really. They can come to an event, and we're always open an hour before, so you can have an hour to look round. You come on a guided tour. These are advertised on the website. They last 2 hours. They cost £10 or £7 concessions. And we offer people complimentary tea or coffee. And at the end, there's half an hour of short films from the museum collection. Or you can arrange to visit. People say, oh, can I come next Tuesday? And I'll look in the diary and see who's going to be here, what's happening. And if it looks like it's possible for someone to come, then I'll say, yeah, you can come next Tuesday at 4 o'clock. But the guided tour is the thing, really.
Right, that's where you're providing lots of anecdotes about this
Yeah,
collection because
yeah.
you've been with this collection for a long time. So you're
Well, it's our 40th anniversary from the creation of the museum in 1984. Yes.
are you doing anything special or have you done anything special for your 40th?
We're going to have a party,
Amazing.
possibly two parties, one in the afternoon and one in the evening on different days.
And Martin, to close us out, can you talk about the Save the Cinema Museum campaign?
We're hoping to acquire the building after all this time. We have an opportunity, a golden opportunity here, because although our previous landlords were the NHS, they sold the building off and the adjoining land, and we're now owned by a property developer. Anyway, we've managed to agree a deal with them, which is now signed and sealed and legally drawn up and everything else. If we give them a premium, it's called, of £1 million, they
Mm.
will give us a 999-year lease at Peppercorn Rent. It's a fabulous deal. Of course, the problem is raising the money.
Right.
So we've got another 4 years to raise the money. So fingers crossed. Uh,
Yes.
we're halfway there already in pledges. So we're pretty hopeful that we can raise the rest of the money in the time period we've got. But obviously, we'll be seeking as much support from all over the place as we possibly can. It's the best building we've been in our life. So let's hope we can stay.
After 15 years of campaigning, the Cinema Museum at last has a chance to secure a permanent home for the museum and save a well loved, unique heritage building. You can help make a difference and join the Cinema Museum's campaign by reaching out to Martin at info@cinemamuseum.org.uk. Once again, thank you to Martin Humphries of the Cinema Museum in London. That's our show. We hope you enjoyed the journey. If you like what we do, please consider becoming a member of Classic Movie Club. Your support helps us produce a new episode each month and continue the legacy of film review. You can learn more by visiting our show notes, where you'll also find a link to the Cinema Museum. Don't forget to subscribe, like, review, and share the podcast with all your film friends. We invite you back next month for another adventure. Until then, here's looking at you, kid.